Hello! So today we're going to take what we have been talking about with slope and our y-intercept, and we're going to put it together to talk about slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is a specific form of an equation where y equals mx plus b. And it's called slope-intercept form because just by looking at the equation we can figure out our slope, which is m, and we can figure out our y-intercept, which is b. And that's why it's called our slope-intercept form, because it tells us those two things. So our slope-intercept form we said was y equals mx plus b. M is our slope, b is our y-intercept, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. Now as we're looking at this, remember that we have kind of three different cases that can happen with our slope-intercept form, which is just our linear lines. So I'm going to draw an x and y axis for each of these. Here's y, here's x, here's x, here's y, here's x, here's y. Alright, so a slanted line, that's what most of our lines look like, right? It's got that slant, that's a pretty regular line. A horizontal line, remember horizontal is like the horizon, it goes from left to right. So that's the special case where we have y equals some number. And then a vertical line, remember that's where we have a line that goes up and down, and so that's a special case where, where x equals some number. Notice that for a horizontal line, it crosses the y-axis but not the x-axis, so that's why it's y equals some number. Notice for our vertical lines, it crosses the x-axis but not the y-axis, so that's why it's x equals some number. And again, slanted lines, those are just everything else that's in that y equals mx plus b form. So we're going to put all this together today, so let's get to it. We're going to start off, and we just want to figure out the slope, which is m, and the y-intercept, which is b, of each equation. So remember, these are in the form y equals mx plus b. So for letter A, we have y equals negative 2x plus 6. Well, our m is the number being multiplied by x, so in this case that would be negative 2. And our b is the number that we're adding or subtracting at the end. So in this case that would be a positive 6. And that's how we find our slope and our y-intercept from our equation. It'd be a good idea to pause and see how many of these you can do with just on your own, and then to double check your answers with mine. Looking at letter B, 4 is being multiplied by x, so that's our m. Then we're subtracting 1 at the end, which is our b. Looking at y, notice how we have that constant of 7, but we don't actually have that x. We don't have anything being multiplied by x. So in this case, we really have something like y equals 0 times x plus 7. So our slope is just 0. And our y-intercept is 7. And that's that special case where we would have a horizontal line, because it would just be that line that's passing through where y is 7. For letter D, well, our slope is a half, and our y-intercept is negative 5. For letter E, we have x equals 2. So this is a special case where we have x, so that would be a vertical line. That would be a vertical line, and so for this one, this would have undefined slope, and it would not have a y-intercept, so we'd write none. Because remember, that's that special case where you just have a vertical line, and it's not passing through the y-axis at all, and it doesn't have, or its slope is undefined. For letter F, we have y equals negative 2/3 times x. Notice how for this one we're not adding or subtracting anything, so it's kind of like having y equals negative 2/3 x plus 0. So our slope would be negative 2/3, and our y-intercept would be 0. So that's how you find your slope and your y-intercept from an equation. All you do is look, and you find your mx plus b. You find your slope from your m, you find your y-intercept from your b. That's all you need to do. Now let's practice. We want to match the equation with the graph. So I'm going to challenge you to go ahead and pause the video and try and do these on your own and then check your answers. So hopefully you paused the video and did these on your own. I'm going to start off and I'm going to figure out the slope and y-intercept for all of the numbers. So for number 1, we have a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of -3. For number 2, we have a slope of -4 and a y-intercept of -3. For number 3, we have a slope of -4 and a y-intercept of +1. And for number 4, we have a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of 1. Now, if you didn't before, now that we have our slope and our y-intercept figured out, it'd be a good idea to pause and see if you can solve this on your own. Well, looking at letter A, our y-intercept is +1. So for letter A, I know it doesn't match with number 1 because that has a y-intercept of -3, and I know it doesn't match with number 2. So it's got to be 3 or 4. So let me figure out my slope. To get from this point to this point, I need to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. So my slope would be -4 over 1 or just -4. So I'm looking for the equation where my slope is -4 and my y-intercept is 1. Well, that would be number 3. So A and 3 match. Looking at letter B, we have a y-intercept of -3, so I know it has to match with number 1 or number 2. Well, for my slope to get from this point to my other point, I'd go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. So we'd have a slope of -4 again. Well, that would have to be number 2 because our slope is -4 and our y-intercept is 3. So letter B would match with number 2. Well, we've got 2 left. For letter C, we have a slope of 1. We have a y-intercept of 1. And if we go up 1 and over 1, we have a slope of 1. So that matches with number 4. And then let's make sure letter D matches with number 1. We have a slope of up 1 over 1. So a slope of 1. And we have a y-intercept of -3, which does in fact match with number 1, so letter D and number 1 go together. That was just a little extra practice, so hopefully you pause that. If you have questions about any of them, please make sure you message me to ask. Example 3, we want to identify the slope and the y-intercept of the line, and then use those to graph the equation. All right. So letter A, we have y equals 2 times x plus 3. Well, our slope in this case is 2, and our y-intercept is a +3. So in order to do this, we are going to start by graphing. So number 1 will be to graph the y-intercept. And then after we graph the y-intercept, our second step is going to be use the slope to draw the line, or to finish the line. Alright, so let's start off with our y-intercept. Our y-intercept for letter A is 3. So here's my y-axis, here's 3. And then my slope is 2. In other words, our slope is 2 over 1, which means we want to go up 2, and we want to go to the right 1. So up 1, 2, to the right 1. Up 1, 2, to the right 1. Up 1, 2, to the right 1. And if I want to fill in the back half of my line, I just do the opposite. Down 2, back 2, down 2, back 2. And notice how it's staying in that straight, in other words, linear line. That's what I want. And now I'm going to use a straight edge so I can connect all my points. And here, oops, make it as straight as you can, here is my line. We want to name a solution of this equation. Well, a solution is any of these points that we found. Any of those points could be a solution. So I'm going to pick one randomly. I'm going to pick this one right here just because I can. That is the point where we go over 2 and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is the point 2, 7, which means 2, 7 is a solution of this equation. We could pick a different one if we wanted. We could pick this point right here. This point is -2 down 1. So -2, -1 is also a solution. Again, a solution is just any point on your line. any point or ordered pair on your line. That's what a solution is. So this line, we want to know how many solutions does this equation have? Well, we have all of these solutions we found on our line, but notice that our arrows indicate this line is going to go on forever and ever and ever. So we actually have an infinite number of solutions for this line. So letter B, let's go ahead and look at that, doing a similar type of thing, except with the equation y equals x minus 8. Well, here our slope is an invisible 1, and our y-intercept is negative 8. Well, that first step is to start with our y-intercept. So here's my y-axis, here's negative 8, and then our slope is 1, which really means we just have 1 over 1. So we're going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And then if we want to fill in the back half, down 1, back 1. And then we can connect that, and there's our line. Name a solution of this equation. Well, again, remember, you can pick any point on that line. So I'm going to pick my y-intercept just because I can. So for example, the point 0, negative 8 would be a solution of this. And there are many, many others. In fact, there are an infinite amount because our line's going to keep going on and on forever. And so you could pick any solution you wanted from that line. You don't have to pick the same one as me. We have a couple more we're going to look at before we wrap this up for today. So letter C, we have the equation where y equals negative x. Well, our slope is negative 1. Notice how we're not adding anything, so our y-intercept would be 0. So we'll start here at the origin where our y-intercept is 0. And since it's a negative 1, we actually need to go down 1 and to the right 1. We're going to go down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. And if we wanted to fill in the back half, we do the opposite. Up 1, back 1, up 1, back 1. All right, notice how our line is decreasing. And there's our line. It'd be a good idea to pause and see if you can finish these last couple for yourself. Letter D, y equals negative 7. Notice how we don't have our x, so it's kind of like having 0x minus 7. So our slope is 0, and our y-intercept is negative 7. Well, here's our y-axis. We're going to go down negative 7. So this is the special case where we have a horizontal line. A horizontal line. Whenever you have y equal to some number, and there isn't the x part there, it's just that horizontal line. And that's all we need. Letter E, we have y equals 1/3 x. Well, for this case, our slope will be 1 over 3. And again, we don't have that y-intercept, so our y-intercept is just 0. So we'll start at our origin. And this time, since we have a slope of 1 over 3, our rise is 1, and our run is 3. So we want to go up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3, up 1 over 3. Or down 1, back 3, down 1, back 3, down 1, back 3. And again, we can connect our points. And there's our line. If you have any questions about what we're doing so far, it would be a good idea to write it down. So remember, those 2 steps are you graph your y-intercept, then use the slope to find the other points. And then, of course, you finish off by drawing your line. Oops, the other points. All right. Letter F is another special case. We have x equals 6. Well, for this one, it's that special case where we have a vertical line. So since we have that x, that's our hint that it's undefined slope because it's vertical, and that means it's not going to cross the y-axis, so there's no y-intercept. So we're going to find our x-axis, and we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we are going to draw a vertical line. So this is the line where x is always going to be equal to 6. Name a solution of this equation. Well, let's just pick a random one. How about this point? this point right here would be over 6 and then up 6. So 6, 6 is a solution. If we wanted to pick another one, we could say this one right here, over 6 and down 1, 2, 3. 6, -3 is a solution. So you could pick any point from that line, and that would be a solution of this equation. How many solutions does this have? Well, notice how our arrows signify our line is going to go on forever and ever and ever. So that means there is an infinite number of solutions. All right, last one, letter G. Y equals 1/5 x minus 5. So our slope is 1/5, and our y-intercept is -5. We'll start with our y-intercept. Here's our y-axis. And we're going to go down 5. And then for our slope, 1/5, we have a rise of 1 and a run of 5. So we're going to go up 1/5. Up 1/5. Down 1, back 5. Down 1, back 5. And that would be our graph. All right, so hopefully you have a pretty good idea of how to use your slope and your y-intercept, or that slope-intercept form, in order to graph your line. Now your job is to finish these practice problems. Remember, if you have any questions at all,